I'm Jilly, the popular TikToker. I already have 3 million followers and I'm used to constant marks from them. But on this day, they went crazy. They sent me tons of videos of some village girl. Are you kidding me? This is an account with knitting lessons. But when I saw the blogger in that video, I was blown away. She was my exact copy. I, of course, was often copied, but this time the girl was just a splitting image of me. I don't believe in miracles since childhood, but she even had the same voice. I was shocked, but then I thought it would be fun to shoot a video with her. This would definitely fall into the trends. The girl's name was Meg. I texted her and asked her to meet me at the cafe tomorrow. Oddly, she agreed very quickly. What if this was some kind of setup? The next morning, I pulled my hood up so the fans wouldn't recognize me and went to the meeting. To be honest, for a year I was already pretty exhausted from filming all sorts of events and this increased attention. I was considered the most scandalous star of TikTok, but I made good money, true. I was very lonely. Because of my popularity, I did not have any real friends at all, and sometimes I wanted to become just an ordinary person again, who did not need to check likes and views every 5 minutes, and be afraid that I would be photographed from an unsuccessful angle. Constantly looking around, I went into the cafe. I was uneasy and felt like this was some kind of prank. But then I saw Meg at the Comer table. Wow. She really looked a lot like me. Meg waved at me. But when I got closer, I saw that she had a different shape of the nose and a bunch of moles on her neck. Meg immediately said that she admired me and how quickly I was gaining an audience. She had long wanted to pump up in blogging and be as cool as I was. You know, Meg, popularity is cool. But being a blogger isn't as easy as it sounds. And then I came up with something. What if Meg and I switched places? She would replace me for my fans, and I could finally live a peaceful life. I made up my mind and told Meg about it, but she hesitated and said that she could not do the same cool TikToks, and the subscribers would see us right away. Come on, it'll work. You will only visit different fashionable parties. I'll even pay for it. What's there to think about? Meg was silent and then quietly said that she agreed because she really needed money right now. I was so happy. My copy would work for me. Cool, all I had to do was change Meg's clothes. My copy had to look the part. So I took Meg shopping. I had to pick up some glamorous looks. The copy was so confused that she didn't even object. At the store, I told her that her first assignment was waiting for her tonight. She needed to go to the next star party in the mansion. Sign a few autographs, smile, and that's all. I was sick of them already. Soon, Meg looked like a real celebrity. I quickly put her in a taxi, and then I went home. For the first time in a long time, I was going to enjoy a quiet evening in my apartment. But no such luck. Meg was tagged in a bunch of photos. From the first comment, I almost went crazy. The follower wrote that Meg was replaced today. The comment was liked by 500 people. I read on intently. Jilly's nice today. She hasn't been rude to anyone tonight, and hundreds more of the same. When Meg finally returned, I immediately ran into her and asked her why she was being so nice. But all Meg could say was that she was absolutely delighted with this life. At the party, she was even offered to become the face of a cosmetics brand and took a few photos. What? Meg? Are you crazy? You have moles all over your neck, and I don't have any. Followers will immediately guess everything. I immediately deleted all my photos from Instagram with an open neck and posted a picture of Meg. Let the followers think that I have always had moles. The next morning, followers continued to admire me at yesterday's party and liked a new photo. The plan with my copy still worked. I could finally get some rest. But it was not so easy. I always had to be on the lookout. I might have been recognized while Meg was hanging out in another part of town. I went to a movie once and just put on my 3D glasses. As I was accosted by 2 chicks, they were asking how Jilly had ended up in the movie theater when she'd posted the story from the spot 5 minutes ago. I told them that they had got it all wrong and quickly ran away through the emergency exit. The fans looked after me suspiciously. After that, I was afraid to go out, and I spent most of my time at home. I didn't want anyone to recognize me again. But after 2 weeks of such rest, I was terribly bored. I usually dealt with this by one means. I arranged a live in TikTok. I prepared myself. I put on a new tight dress and turned on the stream. The mood was just cool. But suddenly a wave of hate hit me. I didn't understand what was going on, but followers began to write that I was somehow evil. And that I looked fat in a dress. Some jerk wrote that he saw me at the party yesterday. I was much kinder and more beautiful. In a panic, I cut off the live. It's just me. You've always liked my sarcasm. After the live, 1,000 people unsubscribed from me. What a thrash! Is Sweet Meg doing any better? I'm sure you'll soon get tired of her too. I called Meg and told her it was force majeure. Meg had to come and do the next live right away. I didn't think she could do any better than I could. But at least I wouldn't have to listen to all of this hate. Meg asked for my TikTok password, just in case if she would need to make an extraordinary live. Reluctantly, I handed her the information. Okay, I would change my password in a week when my fans want me back. Every night, Meg did her live and I watched the stream. The audience was growing and I couldn't understand why it was happening. Fans, are you blind? I had to do something, so on the eve of the next live, I handed her an idiotic second-hand dress. She would definitely not be able to be a princess. I was looking forward to the wave of hate, but all of a sudden, Meg was showered with compliments, like, in this simple dress, she's even better. She finally stopped looking like a doll. The mood was ruined, but in the evening, I got a call from the courier. He had a gift for me, from a fan. Well, finally at least someone had come to their senses. I had just pulled a brand new smartphone out of the box when Meg burst into the living room, snatched it out of my hands, and said it was for her. What's the matter? Meg said that she had been hanging out with my ex, a cool rapper, for a couple of weeks now, and he was sending her presents. I didn't believe it. Then Meg showed a picture of her hugging him, where she gave the fans the finger. This was my signature gesture. It was simply unbearable. I freaked out, telling her to get out of my life. I didn't need her services anymore. Meg looked at me quizzically and said that brainless dolls like me were not worthy of fame. She always knew she could be better than me, and she proved it with ease. I was just taken aback by her impudence and could not even object, and Meg walked away triumphantly. I only understood one thing. I should have told the fans the whole truth sooner. I quickly made a video with a bare neck and was going to post it on TikTok. See? The real Jilly doesn't have any moles. I already came up with a caustic comment to the photo, as I realized that I couldn't log into my account. What's going on? The password didn't fit. I texted Meg and asked for my account back, but she sent me a mocking smile in response. That was the last straw. How dare she? It's me, Jilly, not she. And then the bell rang. Meg has finally come to her senses. But the voice on the phone only politely reminded me not to be late for the presentation of the Blogger of the Year award. It started today at 6. Was this some scam? This was the first time I had heard of it. But they said they had already called me exactly a week ago. Then it hit me. Meg was aware and wanted to collect the award herself. I hung up to the phone and frantically searched for a dress. I needed to get ahead of this tinker. Barely made it to the start of the award. I rushed to the dressing room. But when I opened the door, Meg was already inside, sitting in my chair. I expected any reaction. But Meg suddenly burst into tears and begged me not to expose her. She promised that she would no longer go behind my back and would obey me in everything. Meg was suddenly that sweet little girl, and for a second, I felt sorry for her. I went over to Meg to calm her down. But suddenly she grabbed my arm. What the hell was going on? I tried to pull away, but Meg wouldn't let go. She said that it was only because of her that I was nominated at all. After that, Meg dragged me into the bathroom. What are you doing? But she quickly went out and locked the door. Hey, let me out. I tried to handle for a long time, but it was useless. What should I do? I started looking for something to pick the lock with. And then I remembered my hair. It was full of hairpins. I ran to the door and began poking at the lock with my bobby pin. And finally I heard it click. I ran as fast as I could down the long corridor to the stage, but Meg was already standing there. All the searchlights pointed at her. I ran out on stage and waited for the fans to be happy. But the audience was buzzing, demanding that I wouldn't disturb Jilly in her speech. So they thought I was a fake. Meg said into the microphone that I was just crazy and needed to be isolated. The guards were already running to the stage. And then someone from the audience shouted that in fact, the real Jilly never had ugly moles on her neck until recently. I realized this was my chance. And they shouted that there were no moles on my old Instagram photos. Let them see for themselves. Damn it. I removed them with my own hands. The guards dragged me off the stage. I resisted, shouting that they were wrong. A minute later, I was in the ambulance. The doctor gave me an injection for some reason. Gradually, my eyes began to close. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized one thing bitterly. Life is one and you need to live it on your own. In order not to turn out to be your own fake at one point. I ran into my sister's room. She had another heart attack and she was sitting and filing her nails. Sis, are you okay? Claire was very happy and quickly said that she had a task for me. Anything you want, I blurted out, but immediately regretted it. Claire asked me to take her place at the meeting with her fiance. We were twins. Are you crazy? I'm not going anywhere with this spoiled jerk. Claire immediately clutched her heart and began to wail. Tonight, she had an important meeting with Bruce's father, Mr. Wayne. If all went well, Bruce would propose to Claire. And all I needed to do was to take her place while the real Claire was in the hospital. Well, no. Claire pleaded. Her treatment was very expensive and her parents were about to lose the house for debt. After marrying rich Bruce, we would have a fortune. Don't you want to help our family? Claire asked defiantly. Of course, I would do anything for the family. My sister interrupted me and began to give me instructions on how to behave. And she sent me to change. Bruce will be at our house in an hour. You should look stunning. Once again, I followed my sister's lead and got into an adventure. I hated her since I was a kid. She was always bossing me around like a senior, even though she was only born 3 minutes before me. How was I going to play Claire anyway? She was glamorous and confident. And I was clumsy plain Jane. How was I going to be able to match her buoyant boyfriend? But there was not much I could do. Now I had not to screw up and help the family. I ran home as fast as I could, and just as I was putting on my dress, Bruce's fancy car appeared under the windows. I was afraid that he would quickly understand everything, but Bruce didn't seem to notice and just kept hugging me. I can't stand him. He gave me instructions on how to behave the whole drive. Thank you. I've already been told everything. Shut up already. When we arrived at the mansion, Mr. Wayne was standing at the entrance, swearing horribly at the gardener. Yes, I would definitely have a hard time. I exhaled and forced a smile. I should be clear. I was moving towards Mr. Wayne when I suddenly tripped over a statue in the garden. I fell to the ground, and Mr. Wayne immediately rushed to the statue. Damn, its arm fell off. While Bruce helped me up, his father scolded me. How could I be so clumsy and inattentive? Bruce introduced me to his father and tried to lighten the situation by making an awkward joke that I might be clumsy, but I was a living person, not a statue. Bruce's father smiled tightly and trying to change the subject, asked me how yesterday's event had gone. What was he talking about? Claire hadn't told me anything. I panicked and blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. Dances were rousing. But Mr. Wayne looked at me like I was a fool and said, "At the conservatory?" I thought about how to get out of it, but surprisingly, Bruce helped me. He said that the conductor had been so emotional that he had been dancing at the music stand. I looked at Bruce with gratitude. He had just saved me. Mr. Wayne said I wasn't much of a conversationalist. But Bruce told him I was a great golfer. Mr. Wayne was very happy and offered to play. I had never held a golf club in my life. Terrified, I trudged to the field. Bruce gave me a case of clubs, and I took the first one I could find. I closed my eyes, swung with all my strength, and heard a terrible scream. Heck! I think I broke Mr. Wayne's nose. I immediately rushed to apologize, but he roughly pushed me away and headed for the house. I wanted to cry out of desperation. I'd ruined everything. Now Mr. Wayne would never let Claire marry his son. I was thinking about what to say to Claire when Bruce came up to me. I waited for his anger, but he just laughed. Cool hit, by the way. I couldn't help but smile too. Wow. And Bruce was not such a bore. Then the butler called us to supper. Mr. Wayne was silent at the table, apparently still angry with me. Of course, I understand him. Trying to make conversation, I complimented one of the dishes. In response, Mr. Wayne arrogantly asked if I could cook the same way. I confusedly admitted that I didn't know how to cook. Bruce's father said disgustedly that a woman's place was in the kitchen and told me to wash at least the dishes. He pointed to the plates. Well, this is too much. In my anger, I shouted at Wayne that he was a tyrant and a misogynist. Wayne turned purple with anger and told me to get out. Oh my god, what have I done? What's going to happen to Claire now? I ran out of the mansion in tears. Bruce caught up with me at the gate. He said dryly that he had to go. I tried to apologize, but Bruce cut me off. We hit the highway, and then Bruce took a sharp turn into the woods. It was already dark and I was filled with fear. Was he going to kill me there? I tried to ask Bruce where we were going, but he didn't say anything. Suddenly, we stopped. My heart was pounding. Cautiously, I opened the door and got out of the car. And suddenly a fantastic view of the city opened in front of me. How beautiful. Then Bruce said there was no better place to... He paused. To what? Bruce got down on one knee and took the ring out of his pocket. He said I was the bravest girl he'd ever met. His father had no authority for a long time. He was always not happy with everything. So even if his father didn't approve of our wedding, Bruce still wanted to marry me. I was a wonderful, honest girl. What? I had never been told such words. So I did it. My sister Claire would soon recover. And my parents would still have their home. Yes, of course, I agree. And then Bruce kissed me. What? I didn't expect this and at first even tried to dodge. But then I relaxed and gave myself to feelings. I wanted the kiss to last forever. We watched the sunset for a while longer and then returned to the city. I didn't want to go home at all, so we went for a walk along the old streets. Bruce told me interesting things about houses. He knew a lot about architecture. I liked Bruce more and more. I had no idea that he could be so interesting. Bruce drove me home in the early morning. We kissed again, and elated, I ran into the house. And bumped into Claire. She was getting better, and she had already been discharged. Damn, I'd forgotten about my sister. Well, so now, am I the bride? She asked sharply. I remembered my kiss with Bruce and blushed. Unable to answer, then Claire noticed the ring. Diamonds! She exclaimed happily and unceremoniously pulled a ring off my finger. Claire said with a grin that she was pleased with me. For once, I didn't screw up, but then she would do it on her own. The next week, Claire was busy preparing for the wedding. She was in such a hurry to get married that the wedding celebration was decided to be held in a month. I kept thinking about Bruce. On the one hand, I felt guilty for deceiving him. On the other hand, I couldn't believe I'd been so happy with him that night. Just when I thought I was beginning to forget, Claire brought him to meet our parents. I was terrified. I had to stay in my room all evening. Even though Bruce knew about a twin sister, Claire told me to steer clear. But even in my room, I could hear Claire bossing Bruce. I put on my headphones so I wouldn't have to hear it all. And then the door opened and Bruce came in. He paused in the doorway. Confused. God, did he recognize me? But Bruce explained that he was looking for a bathroom. He was about to leave when he suddenly paused. For a second, I thought Bruce recognized me and he was going to give me a big hug. Of course, dream on. But instead, Bruce said that he was happy to meet me and hoped to see me at the wedding. I was in a lot of pain, but I agreed, fighting back tears. It was time to understand that Bruce did not love me, but my sister. On the eve of the ceremony, Claire persuaded me to go to the bachelorette party, but because of cocktails, she was free and easy. She called Bruce a rich kid and promised her friends a cool car at his expense. I felt sick and angry. Bruce didn't deserve to be treated like this. He was a great guy, not a bag of money. I took out my phone. He had to know the truth. But Claire snatched the phone out of my hands, shouting that I probably really wanted our parents to lose our house. And then she clutched at her heart. Stop faking it, Claire. I'm not buying it. I was already dialing the number, but Claire suddenly turned pale and fell to the floor. Oh my god, she was really feeling bad. I called an ambulance and we rushed to the hospital. The doctors were examining Claire and I kept walking up down the hall, and then the doctor came out. Finally, he was worried. He said that because of the frequent attacks, Claire's heart was very worn out and she needed an expensive operation or the next time the heart valve might fall. Oh my god. I ran to the ward. With the last of her strength, Claire called me over, calling me her favorite sister for the first time. She begged me to replace her at the wedding. I was so torn between my pain for my sister and my feelings for Bruce. Emotions overwhelmed me, so without answering, I ran out of the room. And here I was, standing at the altar in a gorgeous wedding dress. Bruce was there, so beautiful, so desirable, and now so inaccessible. A few more minutes and he would be Claire's husband. I'd rather give her my heart if I could. Can I save my sister only at the cost of a lie? The priest started talking about true love and I realized I couldn't fool Bruce like that. Stop! I shouted. The priest froze in disbelief and the guests began to exchange glances. I threw up my veil and told Bruce everything, that Claire was in the hospital and I was Jane, her sister. And then at the meeting with his father, it wasn't Claire either, but me. I paused, unable to say a single word. I thought that Bruce would be furious, but suddenly he kissed me. I didn't understand what was going on. Bruce. Then he leaned over and whispered to me that he had noticed the change in Claire since the day I met his father. But he liked his Claire. Brave and strong, much more. And then he said out loud that it was with me that he wanted to be. I felt like I stopped breathing. Bruce nodded to the priest, who continued the ceremony, asking if I would take Bruce as my husband. I froze for a second, then said no. The whole room gasped, and Bruce was stunned. I told him honestly about Claire's operation and her parents' debts. I didn't want Bruce to think I was using him for money. I could handle it all by myself and save the family. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I tried to leave, but Bruce grabbed my arm. He said that he would definitely help me, and debts were not a reason to cancel the wedding. After all, he really loved me. I couldn't believe it. Absolutely happy, I kissed Bruce. Looking at us, the priest smiled. I think we can continue the ceremony. And I suddenly realized, the main thing is to follow your heart. It will always tell you the right way. We exchanged rings and started kissing. Did you like the video? Then subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you.
I was on one knee in front of my girlfriend Mia, and the whole restaurant was staring at us frozen. I asked in a trembling voice, "Will you marry me?" But Mia was suspiciously silent for a long time. I was already nervous. And then she sighed. "I'm sorry, I have a new guy." The world seemed to collapse. Mia excused herself and ran out of the restaurant. Speechless, I slowly sat down on the chair. It never occurred to me that Mia would not only reject me, but also would cheat on me. In middle school, I fell in love with this short brunette with beautiful brown eyes. We started dating. When I went to college, she moved in with me. There wasn't enough money for everything. I got a job at an advertising agency. I had to work around the clock, and I started spending very little time with Mia. She certainly didn't like it very much, but I thought she understood everything. I tried for our sake. I wanted us to live well together and not need anything. I always told her that I loved her. Weren't words enough? And now when I finally decided to propose to her, Mia had a new guy. She left, and I just sat there, finishing my third glass of wine. My heart was so heavy, so I dialed Zane, my best friend. Zane was trying to say something, but I wasn't really listening. I didn't even notice that I was walking into the roadway during the conversation. I was suddenly deafened by the car's horn. The last thing I remembered was a blinding glare of the headlights. When I opened my eyes, it took me a long time to recover. Was this a hospital? I had a terrible headache. I tried to remember what had happened, but then the door bursted open and a guy bursted in. When I looked closely, I didn't recognize his face. "Who are you?" He came up to me and, with a sigh, he blurted out, "I'm Zane, your best friend. There was an accident. The doctor said you had a severe head injury and possibly partial memory loss." My stomach went cold with horror. Heck, Zane? Don't I remember his face? Wait, what about Mia? She must be worried. I took off running, but he shook his head and said sadly, "I'm sorry, man, but Mia left you." It was like being doused with ice water. But how? I remembered how good we were together. I wanted to propose to her, but Zane told me not to worry. He would find a girl 100 times better for me, the one who would truly love me very deeply. I smiled weakly and thanked Zane. "Thank you for being here." I was soon released from the hospital and somehow got back to work. Zane immediately started a profile for me on Tinder with my picture on it, and some cute girl immediately wrote me. I thought it was a good attraction. We decided to meet in a cafe. I came there straight from work and sat down at a table. Once in this cafe, I ate pancakes with Mia. The memory warmed my chest. The waitress came up to the table and told me to get lost. I looked at the girl in surprise. Her brown eyes seemed familiar, but she suddenly turned around and left. This was the first time I had met such a rude waitress. Maybe I didn't remember something, but just as I was about to get up, a tall blonde from Tinder came up to the table. Her name was Cheryl, and she sat down across from me and immediately started talking about proper nutrition. Cheryl talked for about 3 hours, and I was yawning when I noticed the waitress standing next to the bar. She was watching us intently, and when she saw me looking at her, she turned away abruptly. What had I done to her? Cheryl kept talking, not letting me get a word in. I excused myself, got up, and headed for the door. I didn't think it was going to work out with her. And half an hour later, I was sitting at Zane's house and telling him about our strange date with a beauty from Tinder. I had to admit, I miss Mia. It was so good to be with her. Could we get back together? When Zane protested, Mia was a stinker. She cheated on me. I dropped my head, and Zane was right. Then his phone rang, and Sweetie appeared on the screen. He immediately excused himself somewhat nervously and walked away. Come on, Zane, do you have a girlfriend? As long as I can remember him, he never dated anyone. Because of this, the three of us often went out together. Zane, me, and Mia. As soon as I thought of her, I felt sad again. So wait, there are still a lot of girls on the ground. After waiting for Zane, I talked a little more with him and then opened my Tinder account. It was time to go on a date. Soon I was sitting in the same cafe, but the girl from Tinder did not appear. I waited for her for an hour, which I could have spent on work. Then the negative waitress walked by. She grinned and quipped that I looked like I'd been dumped. But before I could answer, someone stumbled into the cafe, screaming. I turned around and saw a drunk man. He staggered to the sofa at the next table. The smell of alcohol immediately hit my nose. The man whistled, looking at the waitress, and he grabbed her arm as she passed by. What was this asshole doing? I got up and shouted to let the girl go, otherwise I would call the police. But the man only laughed impudently. In the next second, I walked around the table and grabbed the man by the collar. It's time to teach you respect. But the man was strong. He pushed me away. I fell right on the glass table behind me. The pain darkened my vision. I heard the screams of the guards running up and realized that the danger was over. He was quickly escorted out of the cafe. Then the waitress held me up. She looked at my hand in horror. There was a fresh cut there. It looked like I got hurt when I fell on the table. The waitress immediately took me to the back room to treat the wound, and she was nice to me for the first time. And suddenly, she thanked me for standing up for her. It's nothing. Any guy would do the same. She touched my hand and said she didn't think I was so caring. What do you mean? But she immediately caught herself and left the back room, saying that it was time for her to work. I could still feel her touch. And then I decided to wait until the end of the shift to take her home. Maybe I might have a chance with her, right? After closing, I met her right at the exit and offered to walk her home. All I could hear was my heart pounding. I was like a schoolboy. The waitress looked at me mysteriously. I thought she would refuse, but then she smiled at me weirdly and said, "Let's try it." I decided to introduce myself and immediately asked her name. "Call me a stranger," she replied. "Okay, a stranger." We talked on the way. We started discussing movies, and it turned out that we were Marvel fans. And when I asked her what her favorite dish was, I was stunned. She was crazy about pancakes and jam, just like me. As soon as we reached her house, I decided it was time. My heart was pounding in my chest. I looked into her eyes and reached out to kiss her, but she suddenly recoiled. "Are you out of your mind?" It was like being doused with ice water. "What's wrong?" I asked. But the stranger just left without answering or even saying goodbye. The next day, after work, I met Zane and told him about the stranger who had turned me down. I thought I'd met the one and she'd rejected me. Heck, you know, she was even better than Mia. But Zane said I was too obsessed, so I didn't let anything new come into my life. He grabbed my phone and immediately opened Tinder and made a few more dates. I didn't resist. The stranger turned me down, but none of the girls could compare to the waitress from the cafe. I couldn't get her smile out of my head, and I compared each girl to her. In the end, I couldn't stand it. If I fell in love, then I needed to pursue it and not sit still. I had an appointment for work that evening, but I canceled. bought a huge bouquet of flowers, and headed to the same cafe. My stranger was standing at the bar. I plucked up the courage to go to her and hand her a bouquet of flowers. I stammered out, "I will prove myself worthy of you. Just give me one chance." She was about to say something, but suddenly Zane came into the cafe and came up to us. What was he doing here? Zane suddenly hugged the stranger and frowned, throwing a displeased look at me. My jaw almost dropped. I tried to swipe a friend's girlfriend? From embarrassment, I wished for the ground to swallow me up. I took one last glance at the waitress and ran out of the cafe. I wandered the streets thinking about the situation with Zane and his girlfriend. The stranger, it turned out. I took another step, and then a car honked loudly. I shuddered. It passed just a millimeter away from me. At that moment, it dawned on me. I suddenly realized that I remembered everything. I had a sudden vision of Mia's face. A lot of emotions surged at the same time. The stranger waitress was Mia, my girlfriend. So stop, but why was Zane with her? Then I realized that Mia had left me for him. My best friend. But then I began to remember how little attention I paid to her, and because of my work, I often ignored her requests to go out together. Mia told me more than once how much she missed me, and I worked all the time. What a fool I was. I messed it up myself. Heck, but Zane, how could he do that? I clenched my fists. He had been hiding the truth all this time and manipulating me under the guise of supporting me, and all of that in order to take my girlfriend. I just turned around. He couldn't leave it like this. It was time to sort things out with Zane. I decided to go back to the cafe hoping Zane was still there. It was late, and there was almost no visitors. I was looking for Zane when I heard Mia's voice clearly coming from the back room. I listened. Mia was telling someone in a trembling voice, almost crying, that she still loved me. In recent days, when I was courting her, she realized I was her destiny and that she regretted dumping me, and it happened all like this. And then I heard Zane's voice, who kept saying that he was better than me, that I'd give up on Mia again like I did before. Hearing his words, I threw open the door and walked in just as Zane pushed Mia. Mia, I managed to catch her and then glared at my former friend. Didn't expect me to remember everything, buddy. Zane tried to hit me, but I dodged him. I immediately hit him back. He would know, jerk. After that, Zane, with his hand against his nose, sarcastically wished us domestic bliss and left. I hugged Mia, so we stood in silence for 20 minutes. Then I came around and whispered, "Will you go on a date, stranger?" We never broke up again, and a month later I proposed to her again. Guess what she said? And I also realized if you love a person, words alone are not enough. The main way to show your love is to give your time and care. Did you like this video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel, folks. Thank you so much.